Day 4, round 13 of the Fasting Mimicking Diet DIY style. It's Jamie and Ruby reporting from the Plant 52 kitchen. I'm like, ooh, I don't like the dog kisses. I know, we'll go for a walk soon, baby. Okay. I have just finished my breakfast. We had our group check-in. People are doing excellently. We are holding strong. Some people do fall off though. And if you fall off during the fasting week, that's okay because you can always try again. And the cool thing is if you fall off on day 4, let's say today, because you're hangry and you've had enough. The cool thing is if you got into the fasting state after 2 days, at least yesterday, you were in ketosis, you were burning all those visceral fat things like just the waste that your body no longer needs. And at least you had 1 day. If you do break your fast though, come out of it slowly, come out of it mindfully, eat slowly, eat mindfully, eat a bunch of whole plants, or at least whole foods. When we're breaking our fast, no meat, no dairy. Try to stay off the alcohol, but I mean, by the way Longo describes it, the Italians will go out and drink. So they start their fasts on Sunday evening. So then by Friday night, they can break their fast and have dinner and have wine and have all the plants and some legumes and maybe a little bit of bread and all the things. So today I got a question. Will you be demonstrating your snack and dinner? And ask and you shall receive, right? Or what I like to say, don't ask, don't get. So I will do that for you. I'm going to prep my snack, prep my dinner. Ruby is going to be a huge distraction because not only is she cute, but she's also very large and strong. So I hope that I can show you this. All right, so we're going to get our trusty scale out. There's no cooking involved. So I'm going to turn this guy on and I'm weighing it with the plate. And so you just have to make sure you're hitting that tare and you're just resetting it. You're resetting it all the time. So for our snack from days 2 to 5, we have blueberries and cashews. I've got my little cue card here. So blueberries, we're going to measure it out. And I like to make sure each blueberry is nice and firm. I don't get any soggy ones because we're only getting a few. See, this one's soggy. I'm not going to eat that. So check my weight. And what I'm looking for is 45 grams of bloobs. You can also do, I'm at 45.5. So at that point, I'm happy. I don't need to remove anything. If I want to be really, really strict, I can remove 0.5 gram of blueberries. And I have done that in the past and it's worked fine. But I've also done this many times and by going over 0.5 grams and it's fine. I will give these a little rinse after, but where are my cashews? We will reset every single time. So if you go to the playlist, there is one that's called, that is for this fasting week. And I have a demo overhead view of all of the food prep. So that's another option. We only get 18 grams of cashews. That's 11, 15, 18.4. Take this tiny little sliver away, 18.1. You can also go a little bit under. You don't have to go over. I found another tiny little piece, 17.7. You can choose. Would you prefer 17.7 or 18.1? All right, so then that's that. This is our snack plate. And I'm telling you, when you are in a fasting state and you have very little calories coming in and your body is just scouring for energy, it is not only going to kick up autophagy, which is called self-cleaning or self-recycling or cellular renewal. So many ways to describe this amazing innate phenomenon that exists in your body. It doesn't mean, autophagy does not mean that we're clearing out dead cells. We're not clearing them out. Our cells are scouring for food within this environment that is your body, and it's going to eat the damaged parts. Now, the human body is so intelligent that it's not going to take the healthy parts of our cells. It's going to just go after the most damaged ones. So I love thinking about this as I'm in the fasting state, as I'm struggling and suffering. Today is not that bad, but when I am struggling and if I do need to get back into my mindset of, this is the reason why I'm doing this. This is physiologically what is happening throughout my entire body. I'm in the preventative game. So I'm doing all of this to prevent having to suffer or go through a chronic disease. And it's not to say that I'm going to prevent that, but I sure as heck am lowering my chances of ever developing those things. And I fully intend on continuing this path. And it's a joyful path, really. It's the only way for me to be. Okay, so here's our snack. And I'm telling you, these blueberries are so fresh. Oh my gosh. You bite into them and they just burst with incredible flavor. Look how huge this one is. Oh my goodness. It's just the sweetest thing ever. So if you're that type of person who hears others say like, oh, I eat fruit and it's just like sweet like candy, nature's candy. If you're the type of person who gets annoyed by that, I hear you, first of all. But secondly, when you're in a fasting state, or when your palate has been cleansed, or when your taste buds are reset, or perhaps when you're just like being very mindful of what you're eating, then this absolutely tastes not only like candy, it tastes better than candy. This is a million times better than candy. If I have a piece of candy right now, I can appreciate it. It's a different kind of flavor profile, definitely very artificial. The sweetness is like, it's almost like it is hitting 25% of my happiness. But when I have this, it's hitting a full 100%. And that is the power of whole plant foods. Like nothing can compete with Mother Nature. If you disagree, it could be because your palate is a little bit skewed right now because of an overconsumption of perhaps highly processed stuff. No shade to you. Like lots of people live that way, and I love to live that way. But I'm telling you, just in terms of deliciousness, there's nothing like this. Cashews, many people start off by thinking like, well, that's depressing. When you're in a fasting state and you bite into this rich, fatty, nutrient-dense cashew, it's a completely different experience. I wish everybody can experience how good this is. It's a weird snack. Of course it's weird. We're in a fasting state, or FMD DIY style, but this is just the most beautiful thing ever. I love our breakfast plate on the fasting week menu, but perhaps the snack is even better because it's just so good. So we have to live our lives, and we have appointments to go to. We have events to go to. There's food everywhere. You smell food in the air. I smell deep fryers. I mean, it all smells immaculate. So what I do is I make sure that I got my snack handy. And so at least if I have to go somewhere where people are eating, or there's just going to be lots of food around, before I enter into the event, I will just sit in the car and just mindfully snack on these gorgeous bloobs and just totally immerse myself in the beauty of nature and hit all those taste buds. It's hitting all of the receptors in my body, and I'm feeling good. If I really have to like be on point and speak and, be presentable, then I might need a little bit more energy. And that's where these guys come in. Cashews are very nutrient dense and actually calorically dense. So high calories per pound of food, which is good because I need some calories to get some energy. All right. So that's our snack. Yeah, pretty basic and absolutely wonderful. Now for our dinner, I'll weigh everything in this kind of large thing so you can see it. So as Ruby, as with all cooking, high recommendation, get all of your ingredients onto the countertop instead of running back and forth and doing it one thing at a time, because that's a very annoying way to cook and prep your food. So I've got all my ingredients right here. Because we're doing this FMD menu, I've got my list of items on a little cue card. So first thing is broccoli. And you're just measuring everything out. It's really, really simple. If you're going to wash things, make sure that you dry them off first, because if you wash it and then dry immediately after, you're going to be adding the water weight. Yeah, so you don't want to be doing that. So broccoli is just a little bit. It's very little, but even though it's very little, it is so nutrient dense. And so because of that, I'm getting lots of nutrients. That pretty much hits it. So that's good. I'll wash everything later. Next, carrots. I got these beautiful rainbow carrots, and I only have a couple. Oops, I forgot to reset. Always reset. Start with 0. I'm 2 grams over, but I'll take it. It's just, and the reason why I say I will take it is very important. It's because it's just carrots. And so on the fasting mimicking diet, you want high fat, you want very low protein, very low sugar. So carrots are a non-starchy vegetable, and they don't have high fat at all, but that's okay, because we're getting our fats from avocados, from the cashews, a little bit of olive oil, but these are very low protein, very low sugars. Ruby, enough. Okay, so that's the reason why I'm okay with going 2 grams over. I used to shave off 2 grams, put it back in the bag. I'm just not going to do that today. All right, so then cremini mushrooms. For anyone who's Ruby, squeeze me. We have to give Ruby some kind of a treat. Hopefully that does it. So if you have purchased the guide from us, then cremini mushrooms are on the menu. However, when I say cremini mushrooms and you can't find creminis, you only can find white button mushrooms or whatever mushrooms, then just do that. If you're just doing this on your own, then use something like Chronometer, punch in whatever food and just adjust. If you're just following along here. So let's reset. We're already reset. Now we're looking for 80 grams of mushrooms. That's at 69. It's probably gonna go over. Yep. 84. Ruby. 79.67. Okay, that's good. So about 80 grams of mushrooms looks like this. And again, I will rinse these later. Let's reset. And then we've got some garlic, we've got some shallot, we've got some brown rice. At the start of the week, pre-cook some brown rice. We've got some brown basmati here. And we want, since I'm going to cook this or clean this, I don't want to mix my rice in there. So let's get a different plate. And then we're going to do about 31 grams of brown rice. 26. Oops. 31. Woo! 31 grams. Oh, yeah. And then zucchini. Get that back on. Reset. Grab your beautiful zucchini. I've got green zucchini. I've got yellow zucchini. It doesn't matter which kind. It's just zucchini, any zucchini. So zucchini, 50 grams. 57. 51 on the money. 50.9. This is what 50 grams of zucchini looks like. Not a lot. 50 grams of food. It's interesting to see how much food weighs. So this is also a very low fat, low carb, low protein, just low everything. However, tons of nutrients. And that is one of the key benefits of the FMD, because we are still getting so many nutrients into us, even though we're getting into a fasting state. Some people laugh at that. Other people love it because a water only fast is no joke. So this is 50 grams. Now, to this, we also have some sweet potato in our menu, another 50 grams. So now you've seen the entire dinner. And I will rinse this. I will chop it up a little bit. You don't need to see me do that. I will add all of this to a pan and I will just stir fry it. So typically I just make it into a soup. So if this were all cleaned and chopped up, I like them in like little bite-sized pieces. I'll fill this up with water, like just fill the whole thing with water. Let's pretend this is a pot. And then you will just boil it for about 15, 20 minutes. And then you will lightly salt it, pepper it if you would like. We're allowed up to 1 tablespoon of spices every day or 1 teaspoon of salt. So I salt all my food. If I go a little bit over 1 teaspoon of salt, I'm okay with that. If I go a little bit over or under 1 tablespoon a day of spices, I'm okay with that too. I find that even though I like lots of flavor, I don't actually even get up to a full tablespoon of spices every single day. So to this soup, I typically add in a little bit of dried chili flakes to the water. Then I start boiling it. I only add a little bit of the chili flakes because as it's boiling, that heat and that spiciness is going to intensify and you're actually going to have a spicy soup. So just tread lightly. I love my spicy food. So even for me, that's a little bit spicy. So just start with a little bit. You can always add more. All right. So that is the dinner prep. And then of course, just put all of your ingredients back once you are done. So when it comes to being in a fasting state, today being day 4, I feel actually quite good. Yesterday was a struggle. I am in ketosis. I've measured my ketones. You want to be between, according to Google, 0.5 to 3 mmol/L in terms of your ketone bodies that you measure from your blood. You can also do urine strips, although they are not as accurate. And I've just been told that those urine strips might not be picking up the right kind of ketone bodies. I don't know, but the blood is a very accurate measurement. So I prick myself, I capture the blood, and I always get into a state of ketosis here. I'm in low ketosis, which I'm okay with. And what that means is my body's visceral fat, the fat that I have surrounding my organs, is being filtered through my liver, and then that is producing ketone bodies. Then that goes all over our bloodstream, and then that's what we're using for energy primarily. Long ago, I just heard him say that there is an area in our brain that may be accessed in the fasting state that they have not discovered before. So it's not just the ketone bodies that our body is using, our body and brain are using for energy. It is some other untapped area of the brain. And that is fascinating for a million reasons. But what I find just from a personal experience standpoint is on days 4 and 5, something different is happening. Like in terms of my mental clarity, in terms of being very in touch and honed in with who I really am and what I really want out of this life, I just seem to get a lot of clarity. I seem to come to answers a lot quicker too. So any kind of big project you're working on, if you're trying to figure out what the heck to do with your life, or maybe you have a big presentation or, you know, a strat meeting at work or whatever the case may be, it is a really good time on days 4 and 5 to just take some space and sit down and just bust something amazing out. Okay, so today I did want to talk about how we can control our food cravings and the hunger. The hunger, it's painful. It can be very painful. So in our group right now, we're running a group fast, and I have a couple of people who have never done this before. I love the first timers. Hi, Elle. Cravings, yes. Eek. So I've got a couple of first timers, and one has done a water fast only. So he's totally fine. He barely feels hunger, which is amazing. The other one is feeling hungry all the time, dreaming about food, all the cravings. And I too have cravings every single time because even though I've done this now, this is my 13th round, I still have cravings. I still look around. I still want to eat this and this and that. But it just becomes much more easier just to say no and just remind yourself you can eat that stuff again. It doesn't have to happen today or this week. So the way that I, first of all, control my hunger, especially in a fasting state, and of course, this can also relate to when we're not fasting, is I just make sure that there's just a steady stream of calories that are coming into me. I mentioned that yesterday, but that is the most critical and physiological, logical way of controlling your hunger, especially when we're fasting. Another way to do it is, of course, fill yourself up with liquids. I used to get really annoyed by people saying this because when I'm hungry and if I just have some water, I'm still hungry. So sometimes when we feel like we're hungry, we're actually a little bit dehydrated. And so water will satiate that and then the hunger will go away. It wasn't really hunger to begin with. But when I'm hungry, I'm actually hungry. I want calories. I want food. I want to eat something. I want to chew something. I want a, taste sensation in my mouth. But I have found that in the fasting state, especially when I do just drink something, it's either a hot tea, sometimes it's a coffee, sometimes it's a cold beverage, sometimes it's a sparkling water with no sugar added. When I come out of the fasting state, because being in a fasting state has helped me change my relationship with food and change the way that I actually eat and become aware of when I am satiated, that now I'm able to, when I'm not in a fasting state, have that cup of tea if I'm a little bit hungry and maybe like I don't have time to eat or I just don't want to eat, or maybe it's too late, something like that. But now the liquids do satiate. And I think that it is the practice of being in this fasting state, because that's just me. That obviously is not going to apply to everybody, but for me, I won't say that I'm a food addict, but I love food and I love eating and I love eating so many different things and I love eating large quantities of food. So I am very much an emotional eater too. But I think that everybody's an emotional eater unless you meet that person who is just not interested in food at any point in time. I've met one person like that. I just cannot relate to them whatsoever. They're beautiful, but you know what I'm saying. Most of us are emotional eaters, but it doesn't mean that the food has to overtake us and control our lives. It doesn't mean that when we're stressed out that we have to only go to food. There are plenty of other options that we can go to. Like, I don't know, come up with your own list. Come up with 5 things that you can do other than snacking on things that you associate with a negative kind of outcome. So for me, it's chips. Like I love the salty, crunchy chips. Somebody in our group call this morning mentioned Doritos, and that's like my kryptonite. I can't have just one Dorito. Like I will consume the entire bag joyously. I won't feel bad about myself. I never feel bad about myself after I eat anything, but my body doesn't feel very good. I feel it. My heart starts pumping pretty hard, so it's elevated. I don't feel well. I feel unwell. The next day might feel like I'm coming down with something. I mean, I bounce back from it very quickly, but it's just kind of weird. So after I eat something like that, for about 15 to 30 minutes, I will feel kind of like crap. Maybe my throat might feel a little bit sore. I don't know. It depends on what it is. But anyway, I just don't feel bad emotionally. I only say that because a gentleman recently told me that he ate all these chips and then he literally said, and then I hated myself after that. And we should never hate ourselves, of course. I think that could be part of the issue with like food addiction, but I'm not a psychologist. So the other way to manage the hunger when we're in a fasting state is to make sure that we are being distracted. So some of us are not working this week. And so they got all the time, all the time. So perhaps you might be very tired because the body is undergoing a lot of work on the inside. There's just so much going on. When we have certain cell parts eating other cell parts, like that is a real interesting chemical reaction or cellular reaction that's happening. And that requires a little bit of energy. Because we are switching energy modes from burning glucose to now ketones, that switch, the process of that, I think, is a little bit painful. And so our energy levels go down. Of course, we don't have a lot of calories coming in. Energy is down, right? So calories, energy, but I say just rest. So for those who are not working, they are being very good at just being good to themselves and allowing themselves to rest. That means if you have low energy and you have the time and space to just take a nap, please gift yourself that nap. On the other side, though, in order to control hunger, if we have nothing to do, then all we have is ourselves and our hunger. And so, of course, we're only going to be thinking about food. So some fasters are constantly on Instagram during the fast, and they're looking at all kinds of food. They're sending me food. And I'm like, I don't know why you're doing this to yourself. Don't do this to yourself. So some people are okay with looking at that. And that's actually, in some ways, sometimes how I control my hunger. So even when I'm fasting or not fasting, if for instance, I don't eat animals, but I used to love eating animals. And one of my favorite foods of all time, funny enough, is a sausage and egg McMuffin from McDonald's and their little hash browns. So good. But when I am in whatever mood, and let's say that I have a craving for that kind of specific little sandwich and that greasy little hash brown patty, sometimes I do enjoy looking at it or just thinking about it. So I will literally just think of feeling it. It's soft little bun, juicy interior. When you bite into it, it's fatty, it's salty, it's super rich. You've got the nice soft bread to balance out all the flavors. It's just so good. And I do take myself through that thought process. Obviously, this exercise is not for everybody, but I'm just telling you, it just makes me feel like satiated. I didn't physically put those chemicals into my body, which is what I want. I don't want to put that into my body. That's why I don't eat it. But just thinking about that sometimes just helps me get over the craving. Their weird fake egg is so good. It is kind of fake. Why is it so fake, right? I feel like it's like diluted with something, like plastic or something, but it is so good. But it also makes me feel horrible. So there's a component actually in chickens and eggs that it's a certain type of acid that exists in chickens. And when we consume too much of it, it could trigger depression. So I don't need any help triggering any depression. So yeah, eggs are like my favorite food. If they're healthy, I would eat them every single day, all day long. But another way to control hunger is to simply distract ourselves. So get busy doing something. And even though the body is physically hungry and asking for food, it can, being busy and distracted, of course, can just put your mind somewhere else. And it's all about mind over matter. It's all about that. So even when we're not fasting, if you want to consume less for whatever reason, then distract yourself. Either read a book or do some work or, I don't have to tell you how to distract yourself. There's 101 things on your to-do list. So pick the top priority and get going with that. I know this is very basic stuff, but it works. So that's why I have to talk about it. The second last thing that I will mention is that when we are very hungry, especially in this fasting state, because it's a very different state of mind, what has helped me from round one actually is to just get over myself and just to think about all of the people and all of the help that is required around the world. But thinking about the world's problems is obviously extremely overwhelming, and we should just start with ourselves, start with our own networks, our family, our friends, our community. I start thinking about all of the people that I drive by on a regular basis who are definitely homeless. I think about the times that I've done a little bit of volunteer work in some food scarcity shelters, and hearing like the voices of the moms who are just so grateful to bring home a couple of lollipops to their daughters. It's really heartbreaking. And when I volunteered, other people typically who have been homeless or have been very, very fortunate to receive these kinds of donations from these types of organizations, they too volunteer. And they tell me stories of what it was like, and what they ate. And the only thing that they had to feed their family with was, blah, 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 whatever was donated. Sometimes I look at these donation boxes and it's just like weird food. And so you just want to like go get them a bunch of healthy foods, good foods, not just plants. Sometimes in that state, calories are calories, and we need the food, whatever it is. So oftentimes that is, for me, my quickest hack of just getting over the hunger, or not only getting over the hunger, but just being able to sit with it, because there's so many other people that are just in a really tough position and have been in a tough position. And what do their prospects even look like? So when I think of it that way, well, like, what gives me the right to have food on the table every single night? And, it's kind of a mental practice, but that is real world. That's real life. Elle says puzzles really help because you're moving your hands. Ooh, that is such a good idea. Yeah, that would be really good for people who are trying to quit smoking too, because, they're always. So puzzles are good. Yeah, I think anything with hands, like any kind of crafts. Obviously, maybe cooking is not the best thing to do when you're starving. But for me, I do have to cook a lot because we have a young daughter. And so I'm constantly cooking. And the only thing that I've had to learn to adjust is typically when I'm cooking for her, I take a little taste to make sure it's good, but I can't do that anymore. So I rely on cooking things that I know for sure are going to taste good because I've made them a million times. Or I just say, come on over, take a taste test, and, instruct me on what it needs. So that's the thing. Last thing that I will mention, and this is a good reminder that I just reminded myself of from watching Walter Longo on Rich Roll's second appearance. I think it was aired last year. But Longo talks about something called food aversion. So I don't know if that's a scientific term or not, but it's basic enough for us to understand. And what he says is sometimes we develop food aversions because we associate certain foods with problems. So for me, prime example is that that sausage and egg McMuffin sandwich. I feel terrible after it. My blood pressure is like boop. Not my blood pressure, my heart rate. My heart rate goes crazy. And when our heart rate elevates after we eat something, it's struggling, right? It's struggling to get back to a state of homeostasis, which is just like good harmony and everything is just working well. But when our heart is elevated, something's happening, right? I can literally feel a little bit of like pressure in my chest, and it's just the arteries that are starting to stiffen. And so when we eat something healthy, we never feel that way. And the reason why is because the blood is flowing freely. Our organs are very pliable. They're very soft. They're not hard. Plaque is not building up, like all that stuff. Plaque, the hardening of the arteries, the blood struggling to get through our veins, and nutrients are transferred in blood. Oxygen is transferred in blood. And so when our bodies are having a hard time pushing that throughout the entire body, including this thing, then we have some problems, right? So we could have brain fog. We could have all kinds of issues. So food aversion, foods associated with problems. The opposite, and I will say one of the many benefits, I will say top 3 benefits of undergoing a fast and doing it as many times as you may personally need it. The benefit is that as opposed to food aversions, we also have what I will deem as food attractions. So when I come out of the fasting state, I'm so grateful for calories. by now I've done this enough that I have hit that point where I actually don't feel hunger. So today I've got, where's my breakfast plate? I know it's not a lot of food, but I literally have like 2 tiny carrots left that I've cut in half, this tiny piece of avocado, which is like, this is good stuff when you're hungry. And then I've got 1 whole walnut. It's not a lot of food in my little tea bag, of course, but I have just stopped eating because I don't need the food. So I'm just going to save that for later on in the day when I am hungry. And then just this tiny bit of food is going to satiate me. So in a non-fasting state, that's a good tip too. Just have something that's nutrient dense. Any whole plant is nutrient dense. And all whole plants that are edible to humans have thousands of phytochemicals. And no scientist knows yet the depth of benefits that is doing to our bodies. And I don't think we're ever going to know. It's kind of like the universe. It's kind of like life. And I think we should just accept it, but we should honor it. Okay, so food attraction in this fasting state. I'm hungry. I'm hungry all the time. I'm hungry for 5 days. Come Saturday, when I start breaking the fast, actually, come tomorrow, I'm going to start daydreaming of all the things that I want to eat. Come Saturday, I always have the same thing. I'm always craving bananas and oatmeal. And although I've learned to like oatmeal, I don't love oatmeal. It's never really something that I wake up in the morning and think, yay, let's have my oatmeal. I'm a bread kind of girl. So I want toast. I want broccoli sprouts on it. I want fresh tomatoes. And then I want something fatty like avocado. So it's basically avocado toast. And then salt and then pepper. Sometimes I want something spicy on there. So I will have 2 big pieces of toast like that. And that's breakfast. And then I will need a snack maybe 2-3 hours later because I got a big appetite. If I really wanted to, I could eat 4 of those. Like I almost feel like I have an empty leg. People used to ask me, do you have a third leg? Yeah, I can eat. But when I come out of the fast, I'm so attracted to certain types of food that you wouldn't otherwise be attracted to. So this morning, my husband's doing this with me this week. And typically he craves like just regular rich foods. This morning, he's like, do you know what I feel like eating? And I'm like, oh God, what? And he says, figs and fruit. So he would have never said that in the past. I think this is his 3rd fast doing this kind of a fasting mimicking diet, DIY style. And it was just fascinating to hear him say that. So he is developing a new food attraction. And that's what I've done. I've been able to develop new food attractions. And by me admitting to you, like, I love sausage and egg McMuffins. Like, you know how I used to eat. Like, I eat everything. I'm from the hotel world. I've eaten everything. And that's my palate. I love food. I celebrate with food. I just love it. But being able to love different kinds of food and being attracted to beautiful different grains, like farro. Oh my gosh, I love farro. When we cook it well, it's so good. It's got that little bite. So good. All major health organizations will recommend that when we eat more whole grains, we lower our instances of cardiovascular disease. And if it lowers cardiovascular disease, because everything in the human body is connected, it will lower all other instances of any kind of chronic issue that we may have. So whole grains, never would I think I would crave farro. Also starches, things like sweet potatoes or squash. I was never a squash girl. Oh my goodness. I tried to like squash. I made this squash pie. It's basically like pumpkin pie, but I used a kabocha squash instead of pumpkin because I prefer the flavor of kabocha over pumpkin. And it was amazing. But apart from like a pie that also has sweetness to it, I never enjoyed starch or like a squash, of course, until after these fasts. After these fasts, I took I don't even know what type of squash it was. It was just some cute little squash that I saw in the grocery store. Cut it in half, baked it in the oven, tiny bit of salt, little bit of pepper, and I just started eating it on its own, and it was so good. It was so good. So that's what happens when we break a fast. basic, just the most basic foods are absolutely incredible. And like I said, when you have a piece of candy or anything that is like processed or like, human made, compare that to something that is from nature, like just nature food, nature made food. You just can't beat the flavor profile. I never knew that you could eat zucchini raw, and you can. And I never knew how delicious it was. So sometimes plants blow our minds. And I have a lot of reverence for this. And when you really get in tune with your palate and eating and be mindful, I'm not into mindful eating, but maybe I am. But when you just like sit with your food and start chewing it and really start testing what is the texture, what are the flavor profiles, even if you don't do that, it is hitting so many sensors throughout our bodies. And so nothing hits like whole plants. It just doesn't. Doritos are another thing. Of course, it's hitting us and it's making it addictive. And it is spurring off these neural reactions that are very different from like a zucchini, but that's not going to lead me down a good path. So another last cool thing I will say about the FMD is that many people do use this for weight loss, but weight loss or health. So I like to focus on the health aspect, but I get it. If we have an abundant amount of weight that we are carrying with us that we want to shed, the cool thing about the fasting mimicking diet is during the fasting mimicking diet, there are certain markers that are elevated, certain markers that are lowered. After the FMD, we start breaking our fast, we start eating food again. There are certain, Longo says 15 days later after you break your fast, you're still breaking down fat because lectin is down. And so because of that, we are still in a fat burning mode. It's not as high as when we're in a fasting state, because in a fasting state, we're burning ketones. We get the ketones from the visceral fat in our body. And so it's burning, high fat burning mode. But the interesting thing is when we come out of it, isn't that cool that we're still in fat burning mode? And what was I going to say? Yes, my personal experience. I typically do something called a 10-day connect coming out of a fast. So we're refeeding really well. I know Longo likes to be very approachable. So he will recommend that at least for 24 hours, we are refeeding well. So that means eat everything that was on the Prolon menu, which is a bunch of plants that have been dehydrated. If you're doing a DIY style, of course, you're going to have real whole plants. So when you refeed, you are going to continue eating the same food. But of course, on a day-to-day basis, these are all non-starchy vegetables. Carrots are technically a starch, but they have very low calories, and you are not going to fill yourself up with carrots. The trick is you've got to get the starch in. So this is brown rice, brown basmati rice. If you're not a brown rice person, try basmati because it is absolutely delicious and it doesn't taste like brown rice. It smells so good too. Oh my goodness. Wow, yum. But that's what we need to do. We need to refeed well. So he says 24 hours. He says absolutely no dairy. Try not to eat any meat. If you have to have an animal, choose fish. But I say just go 24 hours, not only 24 hours. I used to do the 10 days. Actually, now we're going to do 30 days. So it's getting pretty hardcore. But what I have found in the past is, even though I kept going after the 10 days, it was at that 15-day mark that one day I'm checking my weight and all of a sudden I see this massive drop. And I'm like, what the heck happened? I've just been eating the same food for the last 15 days after this fast. And it's just because the body is still going. It's just these amazing effects that kick into gear that we stimulate during the fasting mimicking diet. So, I mean, I could just be a commercial for this thing all day long. This is not sponsored in any way, shape, or form, obviously, but because we're talking about a DIY style. But yeah, some people though, and I have to say this because this is a mistake that I have made in terms of like coaching people and educating them about food. My favorite person is somebody who, I mean, I love all people, but almost all people, but I love it when I get someone like I don't know, all of my friends pretty much, like 99.9% of my friends are very like heavy meat eaters. They love their processed foods. They love their donuts and danishes and muffins and all that beautiful baked stuff. Soda drinkers. They definitely drink alcohol, like just like normal people, right? And it is so hard for us to try to pull back on that stuff. They want to be happy. I don't want to like live like that because blah, blah, blah. It's miserable. It's actually not miserable. And the reason why it's not miserable is because you just feel so good. You feel so good and you just can't beat that. And in my world, it is definitely not all or nothing. I am not a vegan. So when they see that, they're like, okay, maybe it is a little bit approachable. But all to say that when people do something like this, or they want to change their diet and they're just so fixated on fat burning and only fat burning and not thinking about health as well, they can sometimes learn about all these things like high fat, high calorie dense foods, and then they can start demonizing those types of foods. So it's all of a sudden like, I can never eat a nut or seed because it's so calorie dense, or keep that avocado away from me because it's going to pack on 1 pound. Oh no. So I poke fun because I have to. And I think that that was the mistake that I made in my earliest days, because I just kind of like harped on that. And then it created these food aversions, which is not what I want. These are very healthy, nutrient dense foods that we should absolutely have in our life. And avocados. Who doesn't love avocados? So I will say also that Longo, in that ritual video that I mentioned, he talks about something called a thrifty mode. So some people get into the fasting state, they feel so good, and they're like, I want to stay in this mode, so I'm going to extend my fast. He says, no, get out of the fast. I too have had questions. Can I just extend this? How long can I extend this for? And I always say, like, break your fast, break it, get out of the fasting state, because it's all in how you refeed. You want to keep losing weight? If you've got that extra weight to lose, as long as you refeed correctly, the weight will come off. I promise you. We won't overindulge in high calorie dense foods like the nuts and seeds, but you can absolutely incorporate them into your life. If you are on a very, very strict path, maybe hold off on them just for a little bit. If you want to hold off for 30 days, great. But after those 30 days, you can no longer live like that, okay? Just be very mindful that food is good. Food is not your enemy. Food is nourishing. So Longo says that sometimes if we stay in a fasting state, or if we stay too low in carbs, because people are so afraid of carbs and weight gain, our bodies can trigger something called what he calls a thrifty mode. Obviously, that's not a scientific term, but he says, don't go too long in the fasting state, since the body will hold on to fat. A very low metabolic mode and a very low carb diet could trigger this thrifty mode. And the reason why he says that is because feast or famine, if our body's intelligence thinks there's no food coming in, very little food, very little carbs, which is like our main sustenance, then it could think that we're in a famine mode. And so in that state, as soon as you eat a little bit of fat, it's going to hold on to that, right? So your fat cells are going to gobble all of it up, and it's going to hold on to it because it thinks, your body thinks that it's in a famine and it will die. So intelligently, your body is surviving. It's always surviving. It's always healing or trying to. And so that's the danger of just being too afraid to eat carbs, which you just got to learn how to eat the right carbs. And the right carbs are whole carbs, whole plant foods. This is a carb. I know when we say carb, in today's general view, people think bread, they think donuts, they think pasta, they think whatever, the highly refined carbs. I'm not thinking about that. Somebody in our group just said, if it comes out of a box, a bag, or something like that, it's probably not a carb that you want to consume. Not always true. Sometimes there's brown rice pasta, and that is okay. Sometimes it's not that processed. It's okay. There's many different types of pastas. White rice is still a plant, but it's got much of its fiber removed. So when you look at the fiber content in Chronometer, and let's say you do a cup of white rice compared to a cup of brown rice, the fiber content is so different. All the nutrient contents are so different. So you do actually lose a lot. But that's not to say that white rice is the devil, because there's still nutrients in it. There's still fiber. It's just not as optimal as the brown stuff. So the whole plant is magical. All right. Well, that's my spiel. So tomorrow is day 5. I'm very much looking forward to closing out this fast, but in the meantime, I'm just going to revel in this fasting state and enjoy it for all that it is, and just kind of be mindful of the magic that is happening throughout our bodies. Damaged cell parts are being excreted. Sayonara. I love it. So tomorrow, I'll try to share the last day, but I have an event, so the timing will be a little bit different. But regardless, I wish you an amazing, beautiful day, and I will see you soon. Bye.